Welcome in to episode 17 of the Print Press DFS podcast. My name is Justin Rue, alongside Scott Bandy, and we're going to be breaking down the Week 14 Draftkings main slate. It's a doozy. There's a lot of injuries to comb through. Not too much value on the slate, but we're going to break it down. So just starting with the injuries, Julio Jones is out. DJ Moore is still on the COVID list. He's out. Kenny Galladay continues to be out. He hasn't played since God knows when. David Johnson has a personal reason he's not playing. Then they put him on the COVID list, so he's out. Denzel Mims has another personal thing. He's gone. Antonio Gibson has turf toe. He is out. Salvin Ahmed and Matt Breida, they are both gone. Alexander Madison is still recovering from his appendectomy. He is out. And Jay Sternberger, he's out. Guys who are questionable, Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake, Jameson Crowder, Irv Smith, Tyler Eifert, Danny Dimes, T. Higgins, and then Justin Jackson has a chance to come back. I saw that he might be activated off the IR, so it's possible that he comes back for the LA Chargers. Doubtful is Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Rudolph, and then Travis Homer. So that kind of rounds up all the main injuries that we're tracking here. Guys that are most likely going to play. Zeke is most likely going to play. Hopkins, Frank Gore, Brandon Cooks, Kiki Cutie, DeAndre Swift is also expected to play. So that kind of wraps up all of the injuries. I think the biggest injury news is probably not having Julio. That really just kind of kills that whole Chargers and Falcons game environment. Just not having Julio is they're not going to be able to throw as much. It's just going to be. It's not going to be as back and forth. It's kind of going to be more of a slog, given how bad Matt Ryan is without Julio.
Yeah, Matt Ryan he's been really, really bad this year.
Yeah.
Even in some of the games where he's had Julio, it's been pretty ugly. And this was one of probably my favorite game on the week before the Julio news came out. And I still like the Chargers side, pretty much off all the Falcons, except for maybe Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
But definitely has tempered my expectation for the game because I just don't have any faith in Matt Ryan when Julio's beat up.
Yeah. Yeah, Matt Ryan was definitely on my board down at 5,700, but certainly not anymore without Julio. So starting with probably my second favorite quarterback on the slate. Actually, he's probably my favorite quarterback if you can pay up for him, and it's Aaron Rodgers. We talked about him last week. We played him last week. He smashed. He's been smashing every week. So Aaron Rodgers, taking on this Detroit defense is just absolutely horrible. They're 29th DVOA against the pass, and they allow 8.0 yards per attempt. So I mean, they're just garbage defense, and of course the Packers have the highest implied total on the board at 31.5. And Aaron Rodgers over his last 5 games has averaged 27 DraftKings points per game. And he's averaged 8.7 yards per attempt. So at 7,500, yeah, he's kind of expensive. He's up there in the range of Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes. At least he's a little bit cheaper than them. And of course, Detroit just gets no pressure on opposing passers at all. So I think if you have the money to get up to him, I mean, Aaron Rodgers he's been outside the top 10 quarterbacks twice all year. So his floor is as high as it gets. He probably has like an 18-point floor here. He's just absolutely on a mission. And the one last thing on Rodgers is he wants to get the touchdown record or something because I mean, he leads the league in passing touchdowns from the 1-yard line. So, like, when they're down there at the 1, they're saying, no, I'm not running it. I'm just going to throw it to Devontae Adams every time. So, I think Aaron Rodgers, he's on a mission. He wants to win MVP, and the defense he's going against is not going to give him any problems in this spot.
Yeah, man, could not agree more. Rodgers is the MVP, in my opinion, this year. I mean, a lot of people could say it's Patty Mahomes, but I mean, just looking at what Rodgers has to help him versus Mahomes, I really don't think it's that close. So yeah, man, Rodgers has been on a complete tear this year. He's got what 35 touchdowns already or something ridiculous. That's the thing, man. This year he's just a different player. Like he looks like that, that MVP Rodgers from like the 2012, 2013 years. And he's just as safe as it gets week in, week out. So, and especially with, I mean, Devontae Adams is always the best player on the board, pretty much any given week. So that stack is just so deadly, as we saw last week. We clean swept with it. So yeah, the only issue with Rodgers this week is whether or not you can actually find the salary to get up to him. We're a little bit scarce in terms of value this week. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is really the only big value, and that's at the same position. So it kind of makes paying up kind of difficult. But if you have the salary to do it, it's always a great thing to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Now I think both of our favorite guy this week is Kirk Cousins at 6,200, and we talked before we started the pod about how nobody really seems to be on Kirk Cousins this week, and we don't get it. Like he's not projecting all that well, and I think it just is either an overlook or just straight up wrong. So, anyways, so they're going to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is a 6.5 point favorite, over under a 53. The Vikings only have a 23 and a quarter implied team total, which I think is a little bit low. But man, I really, really like this matchup for Kirk Cousins. I mean, it is about as ass backwards to what the Vikings want to do on offense. It is almost impossible to run against Tampa Bay. It has been dating back the last 2 years now. They're allowing the second fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs over the last month, only 12.7 points a game. And that's really been the story for the entirety of the season. So 3.42 yards per carry the last 4 weeks, and only 3.0 on the season. Just an elite unit. They've by far allowed the fewest rushing yards on the season by close to 200 yards. It's just ridiculous. Now, conversely to that, Tampa Bay is allowing the third most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks over the last 4 weeks, 24.6 points a game. So it really has turned into a big-time pass funnel to the highest degree. The last 4 weeks, they're giving up a 7.7 yards per attempt, which is not very good. And looking a little bit deeper at the personnel, Jamel Dean, he's likely to be out with a groin injury. So he's one of their starting corners. And then Carlton Davis, he's been complete garbage the last month. I mean, total trash. He got poo-pooed on by Tyreek last week. We all watched Tyreek just go ham. But even before that, he got beaten up pretty bad by Bobby Trees and someone else, I believe, too, 4 weeks ago. So, man, their secondary is just getting pummeled. I mean, last week we saw Mahomes throw over 400 yards. The week prior, Goff threw for 375, 380. The week before that, they had Teddy B, who's never really that much of a threat to air it out. And then Drew Brees took it to him the week before he got hurt. So it really is a pass funnel. And we know what the Vikings want to do. They love to run the ball with Dalvin. But when you can't do that, they're forced to unleash Kirk Cousins. And we've already kind of seen them doing that prior to coming into this game. I actually looked into the data. So on the season, on early downs in the first half, the Vikings passed the ball at a 46% clip, which is really, really low. However, over the last 2 weeks, they've thrown on 56% and 54% of early downs in the first half. And those are the 2 games where we've really seen Cousins come alive. He's been efficient all year, but now he's actually getting the ball a little bit. And I definitely expect that to continue, both based off of necessity, really. Now, obviously, if there's any running back that can get it done, it's Dalvin Cook. But man, I don't think the Bucs have allowed more than 60 yards to any running back this year. So, and the icing on top is just Cousins has averaged 38.5 passing attempts over the last 4 weeks. Kirk Cousins, we're talking about the Vikings offense. So everything about this game just screams that Kirk Cousins is being overlooked, especially after smashing last week and his price tag went down to 6,200. He should probably be like 6.8.
Yeah, so adding on to that point you made on early downs in the first half. So I like to look at also what the defenses allow against them. So Tampa Bay, opposing offenses against the Tampa Bay defense on early downs in the first half are throwing the ball 63% of the time. That's a league high. League average is 54%. Teams generally throw the ball 54% of the time on early downs in the first half of games. Well, teams are throwing the ball 63% of the time. That's higher than teams against Seattle, higher than teams against the New York Jets, because it is highly effective. I mean, like I said, on early downs in the first half, teams are throwing the ball 63% of the time against Tampa Bay, and they're averaging 7.7 yards per attempt as compared to the carries against them. So on carries on early downs in the first half, obviously teams are running the ball at the lowest rate, 37%, and they're only averaging 3.4 yards per carry. So the way to attack Tampa Bay is through the air, and teams know that. And I agree. I think that Minnesota comes out and they just they're not going to get fully away from the run because they love Dalvin so much. But I think that when they see that we're not going to be able to run the ball versus Tampa Bay, they're going to have to go to the air. And one more thing on Kirk Cousins is so Tampa Bay loves the blitz. They blitz the third most in the league. They blitz 39% of the time. Cousins versus the blitz, he's not phased by it. This year, he has a 10-to-1 touchdown interception ratio against the blitz, and he averages 8.5 yards per attempt. So, and this Tampa Bay pass defense is completely falling apart. 5 of the last 6 quarterbacks versus Tampa Bay have put up 20-plus Draftkings points, in their games. So I think that Kirk Cousins is being undervalued by a lot of the projection systems. He's only projecting for around 17 points when over his last 5 games he's averaged 25. So I think that we've basically exhausted every stat in the book here on Kirk Cousins, and I think at 6,200, this is a great play, and I don't think he's going to be very owned, and I'm perfectly fine being on Kirk Cousins in this spot. He's been super effective. He's averaged like 8.7 yards per attempt this season, and now he's going to have to throw so much more. Kirk Cousins is a great, great, great play this week.
Yeah, just to put a button on the topic, I mean, if you wanted to stack Cousins with either one of Jefferson or Thielen in cash, I think that's fine too. And I mention that now because we're not going to talk about those guys later in the pod, but both of them, either one you want to stack, yeah, they're expensive, but man, Tampa Bay is getting crushed by receivers, as we just talked about. They've given up the most points to opposing receivers over the last 4 weeks by a large margin. So I really think this is a good way to gain some leverage on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm all about Cousins in this spot. And I know that Jalen Hurts is definitely get some ownership down there at 5,100 because of his rushing ability is obviously going to carry him. But I think that the floor is also pretty low with Jalen Hurts if they just get the doors blown off them by the Saints, who are just crushing souls of every offense that they play. So moving over to running back, I want to bring up probably my favorite play on the slate, and he's not very expensive at all. And it's Myles Gaskin. He's not projecting the best, and he's projecting for around like 13, 14 points. I think that's wrong. So he's 5,600. He's at home taking on Kansas City. Kansas City, they obviously are going to be big favorites in this spot. I mean, they're implied for like 28 points, and Miami's down at 21. So they're 7-point dogs. That's to be expected. But I mean, Myles Gaskin, when when he's in there and he's healthy, I mean, he's had at least 21 touches in each of his last 4 games. In Kansas City, they allow 150 total yards from scrimmage to opposing backs. That's 28th in the league. It's really a nice spot for him. I mean, last game in his first game back, he had 71% of the snaps. He had 23 touches, 141 yards from scrimmage. And the nice thing about Myles Gaskin is he gets a lot of opportunities inside the 10. He's averaging 2.6 opportunities inside the 10 per game. I mean, that's right up there with guys like Aaron Jones, guys like top guys on the slate. Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Zeke. So he's there. He's honest to God, he's a 3-down plus goal line back. Taking on a defense that's 30th DVOA against the run at 5,600. He's at home. I know they're going to be losing, but I have faith in this Miami defense. And the nice thing is that Myles Gaskin is involved enough in the passing game. So, I'm all Myles Gaskin this week at 5,600. I think he's underpriced for his role.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's definitely underpriced. I mean, if you get a 3 down bell cow at, 5,600 price tag, um, that's pretty solid. Especially, I mean, his work in the passing game. If you look over the last few games he played this year, 7 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets, 6 targets. Before only having 2 last week, but I would say that 2 is just an outlier if anything else. Still saw 23 touches last week. So, I mean, that is so solid at that low of a price tag. And I really think this Miami defense is solid. I don't think the Chiefs are just going to be able to walk in and just slam the door on them. I think it's going to be. I do think the Chiefs will win, of course, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. As long as Tua can put up a fight, and with them being down, I think that if anything might increase the workload for Gaskin through the air. So I think you could project him for 15 carries and maybe 5 targets, which with upside for more, obviously. So uh, at that price tag, I mean, he only needs 15, 16 and a half points to hit value, which he's been pretty much getting every week. I mean, he's at 14, 14, 9, 20, 16 and a half, 14, 15. So he's getting close to there even without scoring a lot of these games. So I really think he's solid, especially in a on a slate where we're really lacking value. Um, Moving on to another guy running back, and this is more of a high price guy. Probably, I think, for our money's worth, the best high price guy on the slate, that's Aaron Jones, 7,600. Um, just a couple notes on the game. It's the highest total on the slate, 55 and a half, and it's trending upwards. The Packers have the highest implied team total on the slate, 31 and a half, which is massive, and they're 7.5 point favorites against Detroit. Um, so to sum it up, Detroit is just getting trucked by running backs on a weekly basis.
Yep.
They're allowing the most fantasy points a game to opposing running backs, 32 and a half points a game, which is ridiculous. They're giving up 4.6 yards per carry. They've given up the most rushing touchdowns on the season. They've given up 7 receiving touchdowns to running backs, which is the most on the season. And I mean, to make matters worse, the last time we saw Aaron Jones against Detroit was week 2. He had 236 total yards on 17 touches. And that is like the prototypical Aaron Jones blow up spot. Like, we know that's in his realm of outcomes every given week. And I've talked about this a little bit earlier in the year. His floor has been a lot better than it had been last year because of his work in the passing game. He's had 18 or more touches in 4 of his last 5 games, and I think he's hit double-digit fantasy points in every single game. So he's not going to kill you regardless. And I really think it does give you leverage off of Devontae Adams chalk. I don't think most people are going to play both. I know we're both fine with slotting them both in the lineup just because of how condensed this team's offense is. But say you play Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams just has a normal game. He goes like 8 for 100, doesn't get in the box or something, but Aaron Jones gets in the box twice. I think that gives you some serious leverage against the field. In a vacuum, obviously Devontae Adams is the better play if you're just going to play one of them. But like I said, they're both fine for the salary. I think this is an Aaron Jones blow up spot. The only issue is that Jamal Williams, his usage is really, really tilting. It's really frustrating to watch when you're rostering him. But I mean, you just have to expect that coming into the game. Jamal Williams is going to play 40 to 50% of the snaps any given week. So it's just something that you have to deal with. But I mean, most weeks Aaron Jones is getting there regardless.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's their goal line back as well. I mean, as 9-point home favorites, 32 implied total. 7,600. Yeah, I mean, you just have to basically be okay with seeing Jamal Williams on the field for 40% of the snaps. That's just kind of the way it goes. They like to split it up. But so moving down $100 from Aaron Jones is James Robinson. And we've talked about James Robinson last week. We're going to talk about him again this week. So he's at home taking on Tennessee. Of course, the Jags have a 23 implied total. They're 7.5-point dogs. So this is like, it's the same thing for James Robinson every week. They're always going to be like 7-point dogs, regardless if it's at home. It doesn't matter who they're playing against. They're going to be 7-point dogs. because the Jags are the Jags. But it doesn't matter for James Robinson. He's averaged 19 DraftKings points per game over his last 5. He's averaged 81% of the snaps, 24 touches per game, 114 yards from scrimmage. Um, you know, he's really just been a solid back. He's averaging 2.5 yards after contact per attempt, and that's really a solid number. He's just been a really good player. And he's had at least 94 yards from scrimmage in 6 straight games, so he has a nice floor. I mean, that's 9.4 points right there without scoring a touchdown. So like that's a super nice floor. And he also is 137 total yards shy of the all-time record for an undrafted running back that was set in 1962. So maybe he gets there in this game and they just feed it to him. If he gets like close to it and then they just feed it to him just to get him there on the second half, who knows? But it's a decent enough matchup. Tennessee's like fine. I mean, they give up 26 points per game to opposing backfields. They're 15th DVOA. So this is really just like a middling matchup. So at 7,500, for a guy who's going to basically be on the field, almost every play, getting 24 touches per game. Yeah, I think that the volume and the floor is massive here. The ceiling's always there. If he can get in the box a couple of times, he is their goal line back. So you're looking at 3 down plus goal line back at 7,500. I'm always into playing these types of guys.
Yep, couldn't agree more. James Robinson's just matchup proof. He's just really good. He doesn't get game scripted out. He gets there every single week. And I actually think this is kind of a sneaky shootout spot, which is weird to say when I'm talking about a Mike Glennon-led Jacksonville offense. But I just don't really have any respect for the Tennessee defense. They've been mediocre at best all year. I think Tennessee's going to have absolutely no problem putting up points on the board. And I think, with a lot of people going with Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Corey Davis this week, it's good correlation. I mean, he's just as safe as it gets at running back this year.
Yep.
Another guy I like going down in salary to 7K is Austin Eckler. So I like this game more than I think most people do. I think it's a decent bounce back spot for the Chargers after they got blown out 45-0 last week. And, everyone was on Austin Eckler. And, I mean, he hit an absolute 4-game, only 12 touches, 8 carries, 4 receptions on 9 targets. That 9 targets is really nice, right? And that's what I want to point out here. His last 3 games with Justin Herbert, he's had 11, 16, and 9 targets, okay? That is like elite wide receiver 1 number. It's ridiculous. So that provides a really, really nice floor at running back. And I'm just willing to give this Chargers offense a mulligan from last week and just throw it out. I mean, everything that could have went wrong last week. They put up no fight. Herbert shit his pants. So, but that's what Belichick does against rookie quarterbacks and rookie-led offenses, right? Belichick destroys rookies, okay? Now, we move on to this game with Atlanta. Yes, Atlanta's been a lot better on defense since Dan Quinn was given the boot. But they're still a mediocre at best defense, right? They're very difficult to run against. Their run D has been really, really solid. But when we roster Austin Eckler, we're not rostering him to, go 20 carries for 100 yards and hit the rushing bonus, right? We like him because of his receiving floor. And now I don't like to assume rational coaching, especially with Anthony Lynn, but man, the Falcons, they're giving up the 7th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs of the last 4 weeks. You have to think that the Chargers come in with a pass-heavy attack, right? And Justin Herbert has been throwing so much. Like the Chargers have had 42 or more pass attempts in 6 of their last 7 games. And that just speaks to Austin Eckler's skill set so well. He's so safe. I think a projection of 8 targets in this spot is just perfectly reasonable. In addition to maybe, 12 carries or so. I mean, that's a projection for 18 to 20 touches with upside for more. And man, and we've seen that he doesn't even have to get in the box to hit values. So I don't know how many people are going to be on this Chargers offense, especially with Julio being ruled out. And it does make the game environment a lot more risky because we've seen how bad Matt Ryan is without him. And it could just be a game where they don't put up any fight really. And that's not what we want in this spot. So definitely a little bit of risk, and I don't like it as much as I had before the Julio news, but I still think Austin Eckler has about as safe of a floor as you can find.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the biggest thing is just the targets. I mean, those targets that he's getting are just that kind of target share is just ridiculous. It's like it really raises his floor, raises his ceiling, just really helps out everything. And yeah, I mean, we're not rostering him to be able to just jam him into the line. He's not Derrick Henry. We're not going to just jam into the line, you know, 25 times a game. So yeah, I like Austin Eckler a lot. And Derrick Henry. I also just want to mention him. He is in play up at 8,700, but of course he's not. He's just not a guy that we're ever really going to play in cash games because of his cratering floor, especially up there at that price. If he was down at like 7,500, maybe it's a better conversation. But at 8,700, he has to get in the box twice to really hurt you, and he's got to get over 100 yards, which could happen. But if game script gets away from him, he's dusted out, and that's just not the case with Austin Eckler. It's not the case with James Robinson. Not the case with Gaskin or Aaron Jones. It's just all of these guys will be on the field on passing down situations, and Derrick Henry will not, unfortunately. So moving on to wide receiver, we just have to talk about Devontae Adams, and him and Aaron Rodgers are just on like this wrecking pace. These two are just like the best combo in the league. Okay, so I mentioned that Aaron Rodgers leads the league with 7 passing touchdowns from inside the one. Almost all those are going to Devontae. Devontae Adams has 11 touchdowns in his last 7 games. It's just ludicrous. I mean, Detroit, they're 25th in points per game to opposing wide receiver ones in the season. They allow 18 points per game PPR to opposing wide receiver ones. And Devontae Adams in his own right has averaged 28 DraftKings points per game over his last 5. That's ridiculous. 10.6 targets per game, 0.81 weighted opportunity rating, 105 yards per game, and he averages 1 end zone target per game. So I mean, it's just really really solid. If you're going to pick anyone to score a touchdown this week, it's probably going to be Devontae Adams. Honestly, he probably has like a 90% chance of scoring a touchdown in this game. And of course, this Detroit defense allows a league leading 9.3 yards per target and a 70% catch rate. And they're 29th DVOA against the pass. So it's just like everything about this defense is garbage, and everything about Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers is great. So at 9,300, just I honestly I think you just keep playing him until he gets up over 10K, and then maybe it's a conversation. But his floor is ridiculous. He has like a 15-point floor every single week at 9,300. I think you just lock in the value of having that massive floor and access to a huge ceiling as well.
Yeah, it's just ludicrous what he's done. I mean, he's had 1,700 yards over his last 16 games, like 16 touchdowns over that span or something ridiculous. Like it doesn't make sense, right? And this is just what Aaron Rodgers is right now. I mean, he gets the goal line and he just looks at Devontae Adams and that's it. Maybe he throws the ball to Bob Tanyan, but man, it's just all Devontae Adams. Yeah, he's 9,300. It's tough to fit on a slate like this where there really is a limited value, but man, if you can get him in there, play him because he is just so safe. He has the highest floor and ceiling in fantasy at the receiver position, probably at any position, frankly. So, yeah, if you can play him, do it. That's really all there is to it. I'll go back to the Chargers game here with Keenan Allen at 7,700. I think we've talked about Keenan Allen every single week, probably, and we do that for the same reason every single week. He has ridiculous volume with Justin Herbert. He's played 10 full games with Justin Herbert now. He's had double-digit targets in 9. He's leading the league in targets with 132, which is 10 more than second place, which I believe is Stephon Diggs. And here's the other thing: the Falcons, they're still getting pummeled on through the air, right? They're allowing the second most fantasy points to opposing receivers on the season, 43 points a game. Now, over the last 4 weeks, they've given up 12th most with 38 points a game. So still mediocre at best. It's not something we're ever going to be worried about with Keenan Allen. And it's just another situation that I pointed out earlier where it's going to be difficult for the Chargers to run the ball against the Falcons. And like I said, Herbert's had 42 or more pass attempts in 6 of the last 7 games. 42. That is unprecedented volume. That is ridiculous. Now, like I said, the only issue here is that we have to hope that Matt Ryan can put up a fight without Julio Jones, which he really hasn't been able to do very well this year. Now, granted, the Chargers defense, not very good. Say what you want about that. But, man, Matt Ryan is just, he looks washed, frankly. Like, I don't know. It's really got me tilting because I loved this game environment. But uh, moving on from that, both these teams are top 6 in situation neutral pace. So the game should be sped up a good bit. And I think that it's just another game where Keenan Allen's a lock for 10 to 12 targets, probably getting an end zone target here. There's no one in the Falcons secondary that we're worried about whatsoever in terms of being able to limit Keenan Allen's production. So 7,700, yes, he's expensive, but the volume he's seeing week in, week out, he's priced accordingly. And I think if you can't fit a guy like Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen is probably the second best guy to go to.
Yeah, I also like Tyreek Hill up there in that range. If you're going to go up there, Tyreek Hill. I mean, over the last 5 weeks, I mean, Tyreek Hill has averaged 14.3 targets per game that's just because Kansas City, they're throwing on early down in the first half over the last 3 weeks, 70% of the time. They're just dropping back and slinging. They just don't even care about the ball anymore, the Chiefs. They just don't care. They're just going to drop back and pass every single time. So, yeah, if you're going up there, 85.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes, I'd do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I want to get down to a couple of these value guys, and there's 2 guys that are pretty close to the same price range. I'm just going to knock them out at the same time. So one of them is Corey Davis at 5,700, taking on this Jacksonville putrid defense. He's had, let's see, over the last 5 weeks, he's had 6.2 targets per game, but he has a 15 ADOT. So, I mean, he's getting these deep shots, and he's averaged 86 yards from scrimmage per game over his last 5 as well. And, of course, taking on this Jacksonville defense that allows 9.2 yards per target and a 69% catch rate, 31st DVOA against the pass with a 30 implied total. I think the chances here for a touchdown for Corey Davis are pretty high. So, so Corey Davis in this spot is nice here. The volume is never really going to be there on a team that throws the ball in early down to the first half 43% of the time. So, they like to lean on the run when they can with Derrick Henry. So, yeah, I mean, the target projection for Corey Davis is probably, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 targets in this spot. But his efficiency should be through the roof against this garbage Jacksonville defense. And especially as Corey Davis, he's third in the league in yards per route run this year at 2.79. So he's right up there in all the efficiency metrics. He's really been awesome this year. And then the other guy around the same price range at 5,200, so $500 cheaper, is Curtis Samuel. So Curtis Samuel's taking on this Denver defense, who on the surface has looked good, but now Bryce Callahan and AJ Boye are both out, so they're left with some undrafted free agents back there and some guys who basically played like 15 or 20 snaps this year. And we know Curtis Samuel is a really good talent. It really helps that DJ Moore is out. DJ Moore, over the last 5 weeks, has averaged 7.5 targets per game. And you pull those out of there, who are those going to go to? Well, Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson are really the only 2 viable wide receivers in this offense. I mean, Brandon Zystra and Pharaoh Cooper are not going to be taking targets away from Curtis Samuel or Robbie Anderson. So, Curtis Samuel's averaged 18 points per game over his last 5, and that's with DJ Moore in. Now DJ Moore's out, 5,200. He's averaged 7.3 targets per game, 70 yards from scrimmage. I mean, he's been a pretty solid player. He's had 70-plus yards in 3 of his last 4 games. He's had double-digit targets or double-digit PPR points in 6 of his past 7. So he's been a pretty consistent player. And now you take out DJ Moore, who's got basically a 25% target share in this offense, and that really opens up so much for Curtis Samuel. I think that both Curtis Samuel and Corey Davis are really nice values. I prefer Curtis Samuel for the $500 savings, but both of them are perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'll start with Corey Davis. It pains me to say that he's in play because Corey Davis has been on my do not fuck with list for a couple of years because he was just seemingly a bust. But, man, he might be just this year's Devontae Parker. Like, you can't really fight how efficient he's been. He's really been pretty good. So it is a nice spot, but I just have trouble trusting Corey Davis. Like that's one of like the David Montgomery things. Like if Corey Davis costs me money in cash, like I wouldn't be able to recover. And so I say that to say this: I like Curtis Samuel better as well. And to just put the DJ Moore news into perspective, over the last 4 weeks, DJ Moore has accounted for 52% of the team's air yards. That's second in the NFL. He's had a 28.7% target share. That's eighth in the NFL. 4 red zone targets were most on the team over that span, and he's at a .8 Whopper, which is second in the NFL over the last month. So that really is a ton of opportunity for essentially just Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel. And Curtis Samuel has already seen a 21% target share of the last month before that DJ Moore news. So I really do think this could be a really, really nice spot for Curtis Sam.
Yeah, we know Curtis Samuel's a good player too. He's just been underutilized. And I mean, they're at home and they have a 24 implied total, so it's not like they have a garbage implied total. At least it's enough. So touchdowns could be here. I think, yeah, at 5,200. Curtis Samuel's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that CMC's now been ruled out too. Well, he's doubtful. He'll likely be ruled out tomorrow, if not by sometime tonight. So I mean, that's even more red zone shares that are up for the grabs. We know that Matt Rule loves to give Curtis Samuel some of these red zone carries with CMC out. So I mean, I won't get mad at like a 2-yard rushing touchdown for Curtis Sam. In addition to his passing game work. So
yeah. Yeah, one more guy I want to bring up is Rashad Perriman. So with Denzel Mims being out, Denzel Mims over the last 5 games, he's had 27% of the targets and 42% of the air yards. That's huge. That is some downfield work that Denzel Mims was getting. Well, Rashad Perriman, he's right up there as well. I mean, he's averaged 5.8 targets per game. He's averaged 64 yards per game, which if you expand over his last 5 weeks, averaged 64 yards per game. If you expand that out to a 16-game season, that's 1,000 yards, which is certainly good enough. He's 3,900 taking on Seattle. We know how bad Seattle's pass defense is. It's just horrid. They allow a 71% catch rate, 27th DVOA, 8.4 yards per target. Just really bad. And they've been better recently, but they've taken on Colt McCoy, Carson Wentz, the ghost of Carson Wentz, and an injured Kyler Murray. So I'm not, I don't think that Seattle's gotten better in the pass defense. I think that it's just ran into some easy opponents. And Rashad Perriman, I mean, his ADOT over the last 5 games is 19. So, I mean, the guy's just getting like these deep shots. He has a .62 weight opportunity rating. So like, I think when you take out Mims, that's 27% of the team's targets. Those have to go somewhere. I know it's a guy on the Jets. I know it's Rashad Perriman, who he has some great pedigree, but has never really figured it out. He's bounced around from team to team, but he's actually found his footing here a little bit with the Jets with no Mims, and Crowder is also on the injury report. He's questionable with a calf injury. It's possible that Crowder could not go, and that would make Perriman a lock since there'd be no one else there. So, Perriman, I think at 3,900 with his deep ADOT and with no Mims, basically him and Mims were getting like the same type of targets. Now you pull that out of there, and a lot of those are going to go to Perriman. So, he still runs 4.39. I know he's getting a little bit older. He ran 4.39 at the combine. He can run right by these Seattle defenders. So I think he actually has some decent upside here in the game where that the Jets are going to be just dropping back slinging all day long because Seattle's going to be throttling them from the second that the game kicks off. I mean, Seattle's going to be right on top of the Jets like it's white on rice. So I do like Perriman in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets are going to be forced to throw. And honestly, if we go back to last year, the end of the year when Perriman was on the Bucks and Evans and Godwin were both hurt, Perriman was solid. He was solid then. He's been solid this year in the limited games he's played. So if we don't get Crowder out there, it's going to be hard to fade that, man. Like that's 50% of the team's targets just gone. And I don't even care if it's the Jets. They're going to be forced to throw all day. So, I mean, at 3,900, you're probably going to get 8 targets from him if I were to guess. So, yeah, that's just really, really solid.
Especially, and I don't expect that 19 8 out to hold. If I were to guess what his 8 out would be this game, it would probably be something like 13 or 14, something a little shorter than that. Even that's deep. I mean, he's just getting these deep balls. So if he gets 8 targets at like a at a 13 8 out, I mean, God, I mean, we're talking well over 100 air yards, and of course the targets are coming from Sam Darnold, and I know those are wobbly ducks, but Seattle's pass defense is garbage, and who knows, maybe maybe the Jets can hang around this game. But Rashad Perriman at that price is just too cheap and is a total lock button if Crowder is somehow out in this game. So moving over to tight end, there is basically two guys, and it's if you're going up, it's Kelsey. If you're going down, you can punt it off. And we don't like these mid-range guys. Like we're not going to sit there and play Evan Ingram. We're not going to play Noah Fant or Goddard or Hurst or Henry or Tunyon or Jonnu. None of these clowns. No, we're either punting it off or we're playing Kelsey. So there's two lineup constructions you can go with. You can go up to Kelsey, or you can punt it off with Cole Kmet at 2,900 at home, taking on the Houston Texans. So Cole Kmet, this has been like a 3-week thing now. So Cole Kmet over his last 3 weeks has played 70, 79, and 78% of the snaps in the last 3 weeks. And in the last 2 weeks, he's completely usurped Jimmy Graham. So in the last 2 weeks, Cole Kmet has ran 33 routes and then 33 routes again. And Jimmy Graham in the same time has ran 17 routes and then 9. So they're making the transition to Cole Kmet, who is their rookie that they drafted this year. And he's clearly better than Jimmy Graham at this point. He ended up getting to the box last week, still at 2,900, taking on this Houston defense that we know is bad. They allow 8.2 yards per target to opposing tight ends, which, league average is right at like 7.2. So we know that Houston's a bad defense. At 2,900, you can certainly do worse, and we're always looking to punt it off. I think that, even with a 22 implied total, this is going to be a close enough game. So they should be throwing throughout. I know it's Mitch Trubisky. I know it's just, it's kind of ugly, but that's just kind of the way tight end goes. It's either you get up to Kelsey or you just punt it off with some ugly tight end and pray for a touchdown. So at least we know Komet's going to be out there, and he's the tight end one in this offense. At least we know that he is their main tight end. They've phased Jimmy Graham completely out of the offense. So, it's a good matchup for him. 2,900 lead tight end in the offense. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, 2,900 for a starting tight end. I mean, it helps that, he was the best tight end prospect coming out in the draft, pretty much why we considered as such. He was the first tight end taken in the draft. We know he's a great prospect. And now he's finally usurped the corpse of Jimmy Graham. He really is just, God.
He can't even move.
He's like the DeMarcus Cousins of the NFL at this point. Like, dude can't move. But so we love to see that. I mean, like 2,900 at tight end, there's really not a lot to like at tight end any given week. So when you get a value, sub 3K as a starting tight end, unless you're paying up for Travis Kelce, there's just no opportunity cost. We talk about this every week. So just slot Cole Kmet in. That's the value that we need, especially if you're not going to play a guy like Jalen Hurts. Because there really is no value at all at running back outside of Myles Gaskin. And at receiver, it's pretty much Perriman, Gallup, or you're paying, mid-range and higher. So being able to punt off tight end with a guy who, is going to be on the field, you always feel good about that. So like you said, there's really just two guys. It's Cole Kmet and it's Travis Kelce. Now, I won't be playing Travis Kelce, but you have to talk about him, right? He's 7,400. It's probably still too cheap. If Kelce was wide receiver eligible, he would be the wide receiver 3 on the season, which is pretty crazy. I mean, he's going to eclipse 200 fantasy points this weekend. For the last 5 weeks, he's had 10-plus targets. He's just as consistent as it comes at any position, and when you get the slot in a tight end, it's just such an advantage over the field if you have the salary to do it. He's had double-digit fantasy points in all but one game. He's had 14.7 points or more in all but 2 games. Yes, Miami is middle of the pack versus tight end, but tight end matchups don't matter when it's Travis Kelce. Like, it just doesn't. It's irrelevant. So if you want to play him, go for it. You just have to punt quarterback and wide receiver.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, Travis Kelce, he's basically a wide receiver. So, I mean, God, yeah, you're gonna have to punt down to Jalen Hurts. You're gonna have to punt down to Rashad Perriman to fit him in. Um, you know,
Both, at least,
yeah,
probably.
and maybe one other wide receiver spot as well. So it's really playing Kelsey puts your lineup in a really odd construction. I much prefer Cole Kmet, who's basically going to be on the field as much as Travis Kelsey is. Obviously, they're
Mhm.
comparing these things is futile, but at the price difference is, what are they, like 5K different on this slate? So, um,
So
yeah,
pretty much, yeah.
yeah.
Four
So
and a half K difference.
it makes a huge difference. Yeah, so that's gonna do it for. And I'm trying to think of like who could be the windmill. I don't know. I'm really coming around on Cousins. I think, and it's just because he's gonna be low owned. And typically, I don't really care about ownership in cash. But when you, especially with quarterback. But I'm fine kind of going against the grain here. People are really going to be all over Aaron Rodgers, and I love Aaron Rodgers in this spot, but he's a little expensive. He's 1,300 more than Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins 6,200. You only need like 18 points from him. He's projecting for like 17. I think he smashes that projection. We talked about why we love him. I think that Kirk Cousins in this spot as a dog, being forced to throw in a game with a 53 over under against Tampa Bay, where we know they're going to be throwing, they're going to put up points, and he has these massive weapons with Jefferson, with Thielen, Dalvin Cook out of the backfield. I really do like Kirk Cousins. I think I'm going to call it Kirk Cousins windmill play of the week. He puts up 28, and it's a print fest for Kirk Cousins.
I'm right there with you. I was going to say I think Kirk Cousins paired with one of those receivers, Jefferson or Thielen. I don't know how owned any of those guys are going to be in cash. So if they do hit, that's a lot of leverage off over the rest of the field. And I really think that they really suit up well. And then other than that, to get a little different from you, I think Curtis Samuel really could be in for a 100-yard plus game. Get into the box. I think that would be real nice at a $5,200 price tag. So I think he's about as solid as it comes. So
Yeah.
that's my windmill.
Yeah, my highest conviction players on this slate, I think that Kirk Cousins, Myles Gaskin, Curtis Samuel, and probably Devontae Adams. They're like my highest conviction, my favorite plays on the slate, if you will. They'll most likely be in my cash lineup, but who knows? It's Friday night. We'll see by Sunday with all the injury carnage and everything that plays out in this 2020 COVID season. So we shall see. So that's going to do it for episode 17 of the PrintFest DFS podcast. We'll be back on Monday night breaking down our cash lineups and seeing how it went, if we got dunked on or if Kirk Cousins completely dunked on everybody. We will be back Monday to recap it. And until then, good luck, everybody.